YouTube frogs, welcome back to another complete guide, this time covering our newest 5-star, Changyun's auntie, Shenhe. As you all may or may not know by now, Shenhe is one of the most unique kits released by Genshin, so expect high emphasis on her talents and how she works. Alongside talents and playstyle, we'll still be taking a look at her weapon choices, constellations, artifact choices, team comps, and showcasing her in the Abyss. The ordering in this video will be slightly different than usual to accommodate better flow in breaking down Shenhe's kit. If you are new here, first off, welcome to the channel and appreciate you dropping by. I also stream most nights on Twitch, so feel free to check out my community over there and their chaotic chill vibes. Link in the description. Alright, let's begin. Timestamps are provided for your convenience. Here's what My Shenhe looks like so far. Base investment of level 80 out of 80, Constellation 0, with level 166 talents. I usually run a default attack percent focus build with 4-piece Noblesse to provide the team attack buff that also assists with her transfer. For the calculated talents section, I'll be showcasing her attack using 2-piece Gladiator and 2-piece Shimmer, which is also a great default choice. Her main stats are running what you normally run pre-AR 45, but are uniquely best for her, an attack, attack, attack build. Here's what her artifacts look like and her general stats at level 80. The only thing that really matters is her attack and whatever scrapes of recharge you can get from substats for her burst uptime. Crit rate and crit damage are still useful for her personal damage, but require a bit higher quality artifacts that I won't be expecting you to have. So, how does she actually work? This is just her elemental skill and explaining what it does. Putting it plainly, she's an off-field sub-DPS ammunition for your Cryo DPSers. The quote Icy Quill is the ammunition that I'm talking about. Cryo DPSers includes non-Cryo characters who have their attacks infused with Cryo by Changyun, or animal characters like Cosmo, Venti, Sucrose, who have natural infusion on their abilities like their burst. To make this easier to understand, let's break down and compare with a standard off-field DPS. Take for example, Xingqiu. This is a character who relies on his own attack, his own crit rate and crit damage, his own elemental bonus damage, as well as his own recharge to output his damage off-field. Attack for his burst's base damage, crit rate, crit damage for consistency of his burst crits, elemental damage bonus for scaling elemental damage, Hydro in Xingqiu's case, and recharge for ability uptime. Then how about for Shenhe? So she's a character who relies on only her own attack and optionally her recharge, but her team's crit rate, crit damage, elemental bonus damage, and additional buffed modifiers. The recharge is also beneficial for her, but does not affect her elemental skill where 90% of her value comes from. So she's the ammunition for her team's additional DPS. The better ammo she is, which means the higher attack that she has, the stronger her team's additional DPS is. Her teammates who use her ammunition still need their own crit rate, crit damage, and elemental bonus damage to maximize her value. This means to make Shenhe look stronger, you actually want as much crit rate, crit damage, and elemental bonus damage on your teammates, and as much raw attack on her as possible. This is also why a good portion of her kit aims to minorly buff specific instances of damage, like elemental skill, burst, normal charge punching attack, or just raw cryo damage, because this all affects her team's damage where elemental skill hides behind. And as you'll come to notice, Shenhe's power is not immediately noticeable. It's not a separate instance of damage like you're used to seeing for off-field DPS. So it looks like a buff, but it actually disguises as her own DPS. This only applies to cryo damage specifically, so her team is incentivized to be near mono cryo or abusing Changyun's elemental skill and or animal ability infusion from Cosmo, Sucrose, Venti like mentioned earlier. If opting for non-cryo characters to introduce reactions such as freeze, you'll need to weigh how much value that provides over the raw DPS increase that Shenhe provides for one character. We'll get into that when discussing playstyle. So, that begs the question, does she need crit rate, crit damage? It's usable, but not a priority. In essence, she can also be the ammunition for herself along with her party members. So the crit rate, crit damage would be for her own cryo damage, but it takes very high quality artifacts to maximize her attack first and have crit rate, crit damage left over, so it's mostly endgame grind territory. This brings the question of an attack circlet versus a crit rate circlet, which we'll get into later. So, to keep things simple for aspiring Shenhe gamers, prioritize all the attack percent first, and then whatever you can scavenge for recharge and crit afterwards. Now that we've covered the basics of how she works, we still need to dissect her kit and figure out how powerful her Icy Quills really are, so forewarning if this section becomes number heavy. Going to go quickly over her normal attack and burst before jumping into the world of her Icy Quills. Normal attack, nothing special other than beautiful aesthetics in her movements. Mostly would be a catalyst for Changyun to cryo infuse if wanting to make use of her normal attack. First, very straightforward buff debuff skill on a heavy 80 energy cost 20-second cooldown rotation. Damage is only meaningful as a proc for our own Icy Quills, otherwise the multiplier is fairly average at 141% by 12 damage over times of 46.4% over 12 seconds. At level 6, this total multiplier is 698%. Since Shenhe is not built as her own DPS but her team's DPS, burst will mainly be used for the resistance decrease, 11% at level 6, and for the Ascension 1 passive, 15% cryo damage bonus to active characters within her burst field. Even though her burst is an 80 energy cost, it's not a necessity to keep 100% uptime. Most of the time when running Shenhe, you'll most likely have at least 2 to 3 cryo characters on the team to constantly feed cryo energy. So I would say let her burst uptime be available as it can, no priorities. And when it is up, your team gets a cryo damage buff from A1, and enemies get a cryo and physical res decrease for additional DPS. Now, onto the heart of her kit. So this elemental skill activates those Icy Quills I've talked about previously. Press glides forward and deals cryo damage along the path, generates 3 cryo energy orbs, and grants 5 Icy Quill ammo per team member. 4 team members, 5 per, 20 total. Not 5 for the entire team. Press ammo lasts for 10 seconds and has a 10-second cooldown, meaning 100% rotational uptime. Hold summons a spirit, dealing AoE cryo damage, and generates 4 cryo energy orbs. Also grants 7 Icy Quill ammo per team member, 28 total. Hold ammo lasts for 15 seconds and has a 15-second cooldown, meaning 100% rotational uptime as well. Both the press and the hold damage already begin using her own Icy Quill ammo. So if her ability hits 3 enemies, you only have 2 to 4 of the remaining ammo for the press hold respectively instead of 5 to 7. Okay, so how much do these actually do though? That's the big question. Warning for this section, numbers. Also, for defense, resist, and level gap, some things are not accurately calculated, but it's still a good baseline. So, take for example a standard swap DPS weapon, Favonius Lance at R580. Running My Pure Attack Resistant artifacts, she has 2,743 attack. So at level 6, she provides 63.9% of that attack, which is 1,753 attack ammo for her team members. Now her teammates provide all the additional damage modifiers. A standard cryo DPS we can estimate with 150% crit damage, 61.6 cryo damage bonus on crit, gets about 7,000 per ammo. 5 ammo gives 35,000 damage, and 7 provides 49,000 damage. If her 3 teammates can provide the exact same output, as in her 3 teammates also have 150% crit damage, 61.6 cryo, she'd be providing 105,000 damage on a 10-second rotation with her press E, and 147,000 damage on a 15-second rotation with her hold E. If we then decide to include her buffs from her burst activation, 11% resistance, and a 150% cryo damage bonus, and a 15% to corresponding skill burst damage or normal charge plunging, then we'd see an estimate of Q math, which is not totally accurate with the res decrease, but it's close enough, I guess. 9.4 thousand damage crit per ammo of Icy Quill. 5 of those gives 47,000 damage, and 7 of those gives 65,800 crit damage. So, full teammate value then becomes 141,000 damage on a 10-second rotation, press E, and 197,000 damage on a 15-second rotation, hold E. So, those damages are pure crit, assuming every single one of the attacks that is infused with Shenhe's attack does crit. Okay? So, that assumes crit and 3 team value as well. If we only have 60% crit on our other DPSers and only 2 teammates that can actually use Shenhe's attack transfer, value drops down to, and this will skip the math estimations, 72,000 damage on a 10-second rotation, press E, and 101,000 damage on a 15-second rotation, hold E. As you can see, well, if you're still watching at this point for the numbers and actually are interested, I commend you and appreciate it. Shenhe's value really bounces between how many buffs are applied, how high her attack is, how smooth your rotation is to maximize team's damage. So, we see average estimation. What does this look like for endgame Shenhe? If you run her with the 1000 Elemental Mastery Kazuha and her signature Calamity Queller, and 2 other cryo characters with the Kazuha Shenhe team comp with 200% crit damage and level 8 Shenhe's skill. So, her attack at level 80 with my artifacts and Calamity Queller has 3,353 attack. So this can probably reach about 4,000 attack to 4,500 with super high investment, but we'll do this calculation with 3.4k and an estimation of a level 8 skill. So, level 8 skill is 73% attack transfer, which provides a base of 2,500 attack per ammo. 2,500 attack, 200% crit damage, 61.6% cryo damage bonus default per character with a cryo damage comp, and at least 2 blizzard, along with 1,000 Elemental Mastery Kazuha for a 40% buff, plus 15% A1, 15% A4, on top of Viridescent Venerer minus 40% resistance shred, burst minus 11% shred, and taking into account 10% base resist, 50% efficacy below 0 resist, which I'm not going to explain if you don't know what that is. All of that combined together roughly calculates to 21,700 crit per single quill. So 5 of those gives 109,000 damage, and 7 of those would give 152,000 damage. This is all assuming a crit, by the way. So if you have 2 Cryo characters with 200% crit damage, all of those buffs, and a standard at least 2 Blizzard run with a Cryo damage goblet, then you're seeing 218,000 damage on a 10-second rotation for just those 2 characters. Press E. 304,000 damage on a 15-second rotation with hold E. That does not include Shenhe plus Kazuha's infusion raw no crit value, because Shenhe and Kazuha are built typically with no crit. If you're running 1000 EM Kazuha, he has 0 crit. If you're running Shenhe with pure attack, she has 0 crit as well. So the raw no crit value is 7,200 no crit per ammo, which is still 72,000 damage on a 10-second rotation for both of them, or 100,000 damage on a 15-second rotation if you're holding the skill. So with this full high-end team value, this ends up being 290,000 damage on a 10-second rotation if you're running press skill, 400,000 damage upwards on a 15-second rotation if you're holding the skill. So obviously, you can't elemental burst with Shenhe every 10 seconds. So you won't have the Ascension 115% and the Red Shred all the time, but these numbers are estimations anyway. You'd probably drop those numbers by about 6 to 8%. But yeah, if you managed to make it through this section, kudos to you. You now hopefully know a lot more about Shenhe, whether you like it or not. She's a character that really scales harder the stronger that your team is. Now then, how to optimize Shenhe's playstyle. She's probably the one character I do not recommend activating your skill before the burst. Instead, I recommend burst into your skill, press or hold. The burst uses about 1 second of animation time, which, if activated after her skill, is 7 to 10% of her skill's duration. And those Icy Quills are very time sensitive, so maximizing her value means using all quills on all characters before the duration expires. There's no problem with running a standard skill into burst transition, you just might encounter those quills running out faster than you like. So here's a demo of burst into skill and then the teammate swap, time difference versus skill into burst into teammate swap. Notice the cooldown time difference when I'm able to swap to my teammates to use their quill stacks. So burst to skill is able to swap to teammates at 9.2 seconds out of 10 seconds, using only 0.8 for animation time. Skill to burst is only able to swap to teammates at 7.7 out of 10 seconds, using almost 2.3 seconds for animation time. Depending on how quickly you can unload her quills, burst to skill will typically allow greater room for flexibility. Notice a slight difference in damage output from Chongyun and Diona between the press and the hold demo. This is due to Shenhe's A4 passive, granting a 15% buff to certain damage types depending on press versus hold. Press grants skill and burst damage, hold grants normal charge plunge bonus. For longer duration cryo bursts that have multiple small damage over times, these can be activated before her rotation since they will use up her quills the fastest. Don't worry about snapshotting. This doesn't affect a majority of cryo characters with long duration persistent bursts. So here you can see with Kaya and Rosaria bursts, they easily use all of Shenhe's quills with their burst abilities activated before her skill. After Shenhe's burst and skill though, swap to priority characters who require on-field time to use their quills. This priority is usually for Chongyun and the characters that he may infuse. And after that, tap or hold depending on what type of buff you wish to provide your team from her A4. Skill and burst for the tap, and then normal charge plunging for the hold. Okay, so now how much value for certain cryo characters then? For Shenhe, all she really cares about is consistently high crit rate crit damage and a cryo goblet on whoever she's infusing with her attack, alongside easy expenditure of her quill ammo. Cryo DPS characters that can have innate cryo-related buffs in their kits are preferable because that means they buff Shenhe's ammo as well. Chaoyang deserves special mention as he allows non-cryo characters to also join the party, but only in melee auto form. Kazuha, Sucrose, and Venti also gain raw value from this with their burst infusions, but usually won't be able to crit due to their builds focus more on swirling and or buffing the team. And probably the most popular playstyle choice will be Ayaka Shenhe, which opens up a very smooth rotation utilizing 2 of Shenhe's tap skills within 1 of Ayaka's bursts. And for my extreme whales out there, C6 Ayaka unlocks that massive 298% charge attack bonus that is also abusable for Shenhe's transfer. Since this 298% is a charge attack damage bonus and not a multiplier, it calculates under the same category as elemental and physical damage, and therefore additionally buffs Shenhe's infusion DPS. So here's what my 270% crit damage C6 Ayaka looks like with just a 3k attack Shenhe. Her raw C6 charge damage, just her cryo dash for a buff. No elemental skill comes out at a 13,400 crit. And once you add in Shenhe's Hold E, her C6 charge attack now does 31,500 crit. Don't be fooled though, 298% charge attack bonus is not a permanent C6 thing, it's just a really expensive Apple Watch. Now when it comes to mono cryo, a question arises. Is it better to include a Hydra unit for freeze or commit to triple cryo plus 1 animo? In my opinion, this is artifact dependent and comfort versus glass cannon. Shenhe's value increases the better crit scaling artifacts her teammates have if they are anticipating abusing her attack-based quills. If you have multiple cryo DPS oriented artifact sets, whether that's 4-piece blizzard or 2-piece blizzard plus 2-piece flex, then opting mono cryo may give you a significant glass cannon edge than freeze would otherwise enable from crowd control and crit bonuses to your 4 blizzard users. A lot of players usually won't have this luxury though, so freeze versus mono cryo really comes down to how much you value the crowd control of freeze. Now let's jump right into team compositions to finish out discussion of her unique kit. Shenhe's attack transfer only infuses on cryo damage, so we are already limited if we wish to maximize that damage. Mono cryo teams involving basically every single cryo character are especially powerful combined with an animo character like Kazuha. Changyun has a comfortable spot with his cryo infusion and large nuke capabilities with his burst combined with Shenhe's buff. In the Changyun comp, there's also an avenue to turn Shenhe into a main DPS build with Changyun's infusion. Her attack transfer will be lower, but her personal damage will also be able to make use of it. Beyond the mono cryo, freeze is still very effectively strong. Just prioritize a cryo hyper carry to maximize Shenhe's attack transfer for just that unit. The less cryo units utilizing her quills, the more hyper carry they have to be to have her value shine. And I know some of you might want to try it, but I wouldn't really recommend reverse melt for Shenhe comps, even though reverse melt grants that 100% damage bonus on that reaction. The consistency will be very low and much better off abusing 4 Blizzard freeze comps. Team comp wise though, she's very dependent on other cryo characters and can serve as a very potent ammo for not only them, but herself. And of course, don't forget about the animo characters who are able to make use of her quill ammo with their burst ability infusion. She's a cool niche experiment. Then, what weapons can she use? Well, when we broke her down, the only stats that she really cares about for her transfer is attack and a bit of recharge. And because our artifacts tend to stack so much attack percent, we would really like high base attack weapons to capitalize on that increase. Crit damage is also beneficial for our own personal damage, but becomes very expensive and generally wouldn't recommend unless high-end whale builds. So here's what we have on the roster, and instead of spamming numbers on your screen normally, we already did that in a previous talent section, so we're just going to discuss them. F2P budget craftable. Prototype Star Glitter is a default option with medium base attack and a recharge stat stick. Ketane Cross Spear, which I haven't crafted, is also a default option, providing a flat energy return passive, high 4-star base attack at 44 level 1, but not a very useful elemental mastery secondary. The catch, available free for fishing, but I would not recommend it on her. Gacha 4-star options. Favonius Lance. This one has high base attack, 44 at level 1, perfect team utility passive, and energy recharge secondary stat. Wavebreaker's Fin is also very nice, with a slightly higher base attack at 45 level 1 and a minor attack percent secondary. Passive is just extra for her burst damage, not really useful for her. Lithic Spear. High base attack, 44 at level 1, similar to the Favonius Lance, attack percent secondary stat, and attack percent passive based on the party members, of which she automatically counts as 1. Great stat stick, especially at high refinements. For the usual crit options, Deathmatch and Blackcliff Pull, I would not recommend unless running her on a Blizzard DPS build. 5-star options. Obviously, prioritize her signature Calamity Queller. Highest base attack at 49, going up to over 700 at level 90. Attack percent secondary and attack percent passive, doubled when she's off field. Engulfing Lightning is also a great choice if for some reason you have this, but either don't have the Raiden Shogun or you just aren't using it on her. This provides all the recharge that she would need and converts it into more attack percent, which increases even more post-burst activation. Don't ever stack recharge for this weapon on her though, she still prioritizes attack percent. Talking about the artifacts for that. Jade Spear, Skyward Spine, and Homa are all default choices. Homa gets a special mention because it converts some of your HP to attack. Jade Spear and Spine have slightly higher base attack. Jade Spear takes too long to stack here. This is not really useful for her. Skyward Spine also has a not really useful passive. In most cases though, you'll be running these weapons on your main DPS, but if you do have them lying around, they can be used strictly for the high base attack. In terms of where these 5 stars sit relative to the 4 stars, I would only consider Lithic Spear and Favonius over them. Since Shenhe is a beefy attack stat stick for your cryo team, at the end of the day, her weapon isn't too picky. Use the one that doesn't interfere with your team the most. On to Shenhe's artifacts. You probably haven't heard it enough, so here you go. Attack, attack, attack. The higher Shenhe's attack is, the stronger her sub DPS infused to other characters will be. And as a buffer as well, she makes very solid use of the 4-piece Noblesse set. In general, I would say her artifacts are very blunt and can be very simple, but there are some nuances I want to explain when it comes to alternative builds or reducing the effects of diminishing returns. First off, set bonuses. 4-piece Noblesse provides a 12% team attack buff that also benefits herself. Even if she doesn't have super high recharge to rotate her burst often, Mono Cryo will usually make this less of an issue. This is the more utility version than the selfish 2-piece Gladiator 2-piece Shimenawa's 36% attack bonus from both sets. The other possibility is a 4-piece Blizzard standard Cryo DPS set, which is attempting to maximize either her own Icy Quill burst damage or normal attack damage with Chongyun's elemental skill infusion. Feel free to mix and match whatever you like to run, honestly though. In my opinion, Shenhe's artifacts are not too restrictive. For my early game players, attack percent. Braveheart, Sojourner, Gladiator, 4-star pieces, and any other baby artifacts that I missed until you get to the endgame grind. Alright, so when it comes to main stats, instead of talking about the Sands, the Goblet, and the Circlet individually, here's some group sets because it'll make a little bit more sense. For a pure attack transfer build, triple attack percent like you see here on Timepiece, Goblet, and Mask. This is a very straightforward build, aim for recharge, crit rate, crit damage on the substats. For an extremely high transfer build, attack, and then crit rate on the mask. This one trades the attack circlet for a crit rate circlet that has 15% or higher attack substat along with 15 to 20 crit damage. This build can also make your Shenhe look stupidly strong with high quality 35 plus crit value artifacts. In a attack crit rate build, you'll only end up lacking about 200 to 300 attack in an upwards of a 4000 build. Even though it is 46.6%, you have so much attack percent stacked already that there's heavy diminishing returns. This one is honestly super expensive artifact-wise and only recommend to probably those who 36 start the Abyss already. Other fine triple main stats are standard Cryo DPS build, attack, Cryo damage goblet, crit rate, crit damage mask. This build aims to sacrifice a bit of her attack transfer to buff her own damage and autos if paired with Chongyun. Standard Cryo sub DPS build, which is energy recharge main stat, Cryo damage goblet, and then crit rate, crit damage mask. This build aims for transferring minimal attack, but maintaining her burst rotation as fluid as possible. Personally, as you guys saw, I'm running an attack build, but I'll probably convert to an attack crit rate build for a high-end Shenhe build. Time for Constellations. This is mostly for my whales out there who are dedicated to Saber VA and have multiple Constellation Shenhe. Constellation 1. Elemental skill gains and additional charge. Unfortunately, this does not stack the quills. It only refreshes with the most recent tap or hold. Unfortunately, this does not stack the quill ammo to 10 to 14. It only refreshes with the most recent tap or hold. This assists with additional energy problems and helps with more precisely aligning certain combos. For endgame team compositions, this mostly helps Ayaka synergies with maximizing her burst damage. Constellation 2. Her burst duration increases from 12 seconds to 18 seconds, a 50% increase. The uptime increases from 60% to 90% given a 20-second cooldown. Along with her Ascension 1 passive, which I'll note again, 15% cryo damage bonus after activating her burst with Constellation 2 also increases cryo crit damage by 15%. So along with the cryo physical resistance decrease of her burst, that also buffs cryo damage, it now also grants crit damage bonus. Basically, this solidifies her burst as a rotational buffing ability over a DPS. Constellation 3. Plus 3 levels to her elemental skill for more attack transfer. So her attack transfer scaling is average 3.5% per level, with every third being 4.5%, so this would usually give about 11.5% attack transfer increase. Constellation 4. Scales the damage of her elemental skill even further, stacking by 5% per activation from any team member. These stacks are all consumed by the next skill usage, so up to 20 to 28 stacks per possible rotation below C6. At C6, you can actually hit the 50 per. If this passive is maximized, Constellation 4 can improve her elemental skill DPS output by above 100% up to 250%. This constellation is where her elemental skill DPS starts picking up quite immensely and even overpowering the base damage of your usual cryo DPS carries. Unfortunately, paywall is high at Constellation 4. Constellation 5, plus 3 levels on her burst, plus 3% more resistance decrease for cryo and physical. Constellation 6, her quills no longer proc their quota on normal charge attacks. So the usual 5 to 7 usages no longer apply, but this is only for normal charged, not even plunging. This constellation is really just meant for Ayaka, who can abuse this with her triple proc charge attack. This also enables her Constellation 4 to reach 50 stacks and make them even stronger per rotation. So for my Omega whales out there, C6 Shenhe's synergy with Constellation 6 Ayaka becomes very insane and extremely potent damage output. But this is definitely Omega Well territory, especially for a character that is highly dependent on her teammates. Alright, let's showcase how she fits within Cryo-oriented team comps. She'll be running her signature Calamity Queller for the highest attack transfer. Cue the music, Mr. Coke. And with the showcase complete, that about wraps up the core of this guide. With a unique attack and fusion mechanic that assists her team from the shadows, Shenhe excels at harnessing the team's cryo damage to maximize her invisible sub DPS while also providing wide-scale team buffs. If this guide helped you understand Shenhe a little better, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's free and really helps the video get recommended and reach a broader audience. Thanks for watching, and I wish that everyone still trying to pull Shenhe the best of luck. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.